The MCU's Blade, a movie first announced about 5 years ago in July of 2019 that hasn't gained any traction since. From writer to new writer to new writer, from director to new director to new director. Not only has the previous Blade star Wesley Snipes addressed the new film's struggles, but the star they got for the new film in Mahershala Ali may be turning against the film as well. He had refrained from taking any major roles in projects, awaiting for when they would start filming Blade, but he's wasted 5 years of his acting career on a film that hasn't come out. So he recently took a starring role in the new Jurassic World film, expected to be released next year. So if they don't want to lose Mahershala Ali, they need a good story and they need it quickly. And they need to fix a lot of things with Marvel right now that I have another video on if you're interested in watching it, on 5 things I would fix for the MCU, but for now let's focus on Blade. The prerequisites: have it lead into a Midnight Suns project, and somehow connect it into the end of Eternals where Blade approaches Black Knight. Outside of that, make it feel like Blade. So if they need this story quickly, I've got it. Welcome to Big Flick Energy, and let's get into my proposal for the MCU's Blade movie. Eric Brooks was born in Soho, London in 1942. His father, Lucas Cross, a member of the secret society of the Order of Tyranna, which will be inspired by the Court of Owls from DC, sent his pregnant wife Tara to England before he was taken prisoner in Latveria, home of the eventual Doctor Doom. There she took the name Vanessa Brooks and found shelter with brothel owner Madame Vanity, another member of the Order of Tyranna. While there, we see a newspaper come in with the headline stating World War hero Steve Captain America Rogers dead. Experiencing labor complications, Tara was forced to seek a doctor's assistance. The doctor, Deacon Frost, was actually a vampire and feasted on the woman in a very shocking horror film-esque moment as she gave birth, passing on a series of enzymes that altered her baby. The enzymes entered the infant's bloodstream, transforming him into being tainted by a vampire's kiss, but not converted. In other words, half human, half vampire, also called the Dampier. Frost was driven away by a mysterious figure with a serpent mask before he could slay the child. Tara perished, leaving the orphan Eric Brooks to be raised at Madame Vanity's brothel. We jump forward 50 years to 1990 Soho to the tune of How's Life in London by London Posse, and see the streets, the clubs, the brothels, and the drug deals in the streets. Eric grew up and was kept out of the loop of his family's affairs, eventually running the brothel and becoming a pimp. Brothels became illegal in London in 1956, so they've been running it in hiding since then. We cut to the brothel scene earlier in the film, and on the radio in the background hear Killer by Adamski and Seal. We see Madame Vanity on her deathbed as she and Eric reminisce about their lives together and the overall impermanence of life. Vanity looks at Eric again and addresses him as Lucas, his father he never met, and tells him the Order of Tyranna needs to know as Eric looks confused and asks what it is, but she dies. Eric begins crying and looking around the brothel, thinking back on his life and why he's done the things he has and how he's wasted his life being a bum. When out of nowhere, we see the cops break into the brothel to shut down the operation. 2 of the cops take him outside as the rest stay inside, and when they take him, Eric fights back. He knocks them both down after struggling and makes a run for it. He eventually ends up in a pitch black alleyway. As he is walking through, he's attacked by a vampire with an unexpected jump scare sequence that bites him on the neck. As he gets bitten, we see the vampire get shot through the heart with a wooden stake as the vampire becomes dust, in a very similar way to how Thanos snapped and made a lot of the people into dust in Avengers Infinity War. It's going to be a very similar effect used here. The man who shot the stake with his crossbow, also known as Jamal Afari, walks out and sees Eric on the floor as he picks him up and is in shock to see a human that wasn't turned into a vampire by a vampire bite. Jamal tells Eric to come with him and that he's with the CIA and needs to write an investigation report. He goes with him, and when they arrive, it's just a random mansion, and Jamal says he lied and that he's not from the CIA, and he needs to run some tests on Eric, obviously to Eric's initial disapproval. But Jamal just puts the syringe in Eric's arm and tells Eric he got what he needs. Also, you're going to notice through the story that Jamal's personality is going to be a fusion of Billy Butcher, Nick Fury, and Edna Mode. So that's going to be his combination in this film, while Eric's will have more of an arc of scared and unknowing, and then converting into confident and inspired, And ultimately, he's gonna start acting like Michael Jordan from The Last Dance. Eric's angry, but Jamal sees the tests and they show him to be a half-blood. He tells this to Eric and says that makes him a Dhampir, but there aren't any others, so the Dhampir. Eric is confused and tries to leave, but Jamal explains vampires and how what attacked him doesn't make any sense based off the vampire just dissolving into dust. How can he make sense of that being a real person? And he said maybe it was that blue highlighter space tech they had in World War II that killed the leader from Hydra, speaking about Red Skull. Eventually, he realizes after debate with Jamal that there is no other explanation, and Jamal begins to show him pictures of vampires he's fought. As he shows him pictures and leaves audio with him on how vampires work, he walks away and starts looking through this book he has. He asks Eric about his parents, and he says he never met his father, and his mother died giving birth to him. Jamal says that he's sorry to say, but she didn't die giving birth to him. The only explanation for his abilities is his mother was killed by a vampire while giving birth. Eric, now curious as how they can find this vampire, if this is true, as he wants to redeem himself and do something good for once in his life. And Jamal says he knows a way, but he needs to first help Eric unlock his abilities. He has an idea of how to unlock the abilities, to which Eric is once again confused, asking what abilities and what's in that book. Jamal responds saying he'll see which abilities, but they're going to attempt an ancient practice used by the first holders of what is called the mutant gene to unlock their abilities, and that it may activate the vampire gene in Eric, even though it's slightly different. Eric asks what a mutant is, and Jamal tells him you'll learn when you're ready, but for now it's time to unlock whatever power he has. Eric's very confused as he follows Jamal, who picks up his phone and dials 999 into the house phone. He tells the person on the other line he needs a jet ASAP, leaving Eric in shock, because who just owns a jet like that, or can call a jet like that? After this, Jamal says that Eric for them to go outside, and when they do, Jamal wants to spar against Eric. Eric doesn't want to at first until Jamal throws the first punch. They begin to fight, and it's obvious that an older Jamal is still somehow more agile, stronger, and more skilled than Eric, where eventually Eric gets knocked out by Jamal. When Eric wakes up, they're in the jet, and Eric, with a massive headache, asks Jamal why he knocked him out, to which he says another method of unlocking the ancient mutant gene is in combat, so he was hoping maybe it would work, but since it didn't, he'll be using another method. Eric asks about this method, and Jamal begins to proclaim that this was a practice first originated in ancient Egypt, where the Great Pyramid's corners align with the cardinal directions, leading some to believe the Egyptians used the sun's motion to achieve this precise alignment and would allocate themselves in the direct location of the sun's rays to allow the radiation to unlock their abilities. The problem is, since the vampire gene isn't the same as the mutant gene, it's very possible and likely that solar radiation doesn't unlock these abilities since sunlight weakens vampires. So they're going to try another type of radiation. Eric's confused and scared and asks what Jamal means, and Jamal tells him no worries, he already has a parachute on, just pull the string and you'll be good to go. I'm gonna die, shouts Eric. No, I just told you pull the string and the parachute will open. And the radiation? Oh, good point. Only one way to find out. Welcome to Chernobyl. Jamal pushes him out of the door as Eric free falls to Chernobyl, but he uses the parachute to help slow his descent. As he gets down, he finds it very hard to breathe as we see the cuts from his fight with Jamal start to fade away, as he stands up and after a moment of weakness is now stronger than ever. Jamal, over an earpiece he gave to Eric, asked if it worked and if it did to just walk south. For how long? Asks Eric. 14, 15 kilometers, says Jamal. Eric curses out Jamal and begins his journey to the tune of Country House by Blur. We cut to Jamal, who lands his jet outside of a mansion in Russia. He gets out of the jet, and it's obvious this is some sort of secret organization by the way they check him and nod at him as he enters the building. He goes to the main office quarters of the mansion to meet with Ofelia Petrovna, otherwise known as the Phantasma. He tries to talk, but she interrupts, asking why she's helping unlock the child's ability after Madame Vanity had spent her life keeping it from him. To which Jamal says he believes Eric can be an asset. They have a long argument over his role and whether he'll become an asset and vampire hunter, or if he'll end up becoming the vampire that hunts the hunters. Eventually, Ophelia says that if his plan doesn't work, the world will be overrun by monsters, so he begged not to fail. At this moment, he gets a call on the comm from Eric saying he's out and asking where he is. Jamal says he'll be right there, hangs up, and tells Ophelia to remember why he's the Order's keeper of the Grimoire. We see the jet arrive for Eric, and as he gets in and they fly back to the UK, Jamal asks him what he feels and how he got out of the nuclear zone so quickly. Eric says he feels incredible and that he got out so quickly by running in a way he's never done before. Jamal says that's great and that now they can put it to the test as they journey to a mission back in the UK, as he has a lead on who the vampire that killed his mother may have been and where he is, and that having a Dampier fighting by his side should help in the mission. They also begin to explore what abilities Eric can have. They see that he has enhanced strength, enhanced speed. Alongside, he now has some vampire fangs. And once again, Eric asks if that's what Jamal's book says. And Eric asks again what the book is, to which Jamal explains it's a book that speaks on the monsters that roam the earth, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and any prophecies related to them, like the prophecy of the Dampier. He asks if he can see the prophecy, to which Jamal proclaims that only one can hold the book. No two can know of the content of the book, and both can live. But that maybe one day, when he does, since Eric's probably immortal now, he'll hand him over the book to be its holder once he dies. Eric's in shock when he hears he'll be immortal, and Jamal tells him, or at the very least he's guessing he'll age really slowly like Yoda in Star Wars, but asks if he wants to put it to the test as he gives him a staff like in their earlier fight for them to spar. Now it's evident Eric is stronger and faster, but much less skilled. So Jamal begins to train him until their jet reaches a nearby mansion. As they arrive at the mansion, Jamal tells Eric to put on some new clothes, and Jamal gives him his classic green trench coat and blue pants look from the comics, while Jamal wears the much more famous black trench coat design. And obviously Eric's not happy with what he's wearing. He says that Jamal looks much better. But eventually we will see Eric don the black trench coat, just not yet. After they're both ready, they head out in a black limousine that takes them to the back streets of Westminster. Jamal explains that his source told him the Essex crime family originated when the man Nathaniel Essex and the Marauders came to an agreement that led to Essex trying to bring about the next stage of evolution for humankind, which he saw to be these monsters. But some weren't happy with his research and got rid of him, leaving the Marauders to build a crime family around his legacy. They were never a threat, but recently started using vampires as part of their army, meaning they found a way to keep alive the vision of Essex. Apparently, his source believes one of the main vampires seen in the crime family had been seen for years doing work nearby the brothel. Eric says he shouldn't be there because he owes the crime family way too much money, to which Jamal says that he doesn't. Eric's confused, but Jamal says you can't owe somebody money if they're dead. Eric's in shock, asking if they're killing all of them, and that he didn't sign up for this. So Jamal says he wanted to make up for the good people he hurt, try hurting some bad people and see how that feels for a change. They go up to the guards at the front and Jamal kills one with a sword, and Eric gets shot in the chest by the other and takes a deep breath and then punches the guard, knocking him out in one hit. They go inside and begin fighting everybody in the building to the tune of Street Tough by Double Trouble and Rebel MC. It's kind of tough to go into fight details like this through a video, but we'll see Eric have his first skill and accidentally taste blood, which activates something in him where he lusts for blood and starts to kill both vampires and humans in an equally bloody fashion with his bare hands, a wooden stake, and 2 machine pistols, while Jamal uses his crossbow and acid blaze sword. A lot of the fight choreography will be reminiscent of Bad Boys for Life and Bad Boys Ride or Die, with long takes similar to the church scene in Kingsman. They take out all of the guards and marauders and reach the main room where they meet Deacon Frost. Deacon looks at them and smells them and tells them they were both there the night he didn't finish his job. He can recognize it by their scent. Deacon says to let Jamal explain what he means, but proceeds to shoot Jamal through the chest, instead saying he can do the talking. Jamal doesn't have to do it. Deacon begins to tell Eric that he was tasked with killing the children of all members of the Order, but that one slipped. Him. Why did he slip? Because he was saved by an agent of the Order, the man by his side, Jamal. He bites Eric and realizes nothing happens as he looks in shock and calls him out as the Dampier. At this moment, a half-dead Jamal realizes that he has a UV grenade on him and he releases it, forcing Deacon to flee. Also, UV grenades are pretty much just going to be flash bombs that they're going to release UV energy. So it's something that obviously UV rays from the sun, vampires can't handle. Jamal tells Eric that Deacon will be back any second, but he needs him to take the book, become its keeper, and finish his mission. He tells him the book has more secrets than what's written on the pages that are unveiled through the dust of a vampire over the rays of the sun. They have a heartfelt moment as Jamal tells Eric his dad was a good friend of his before he disappeared, and Jamal eventually dies. At this moment, Deacon returns and Eric is gone along with the book and the body of Jamal. Eric gets back to the car and the driver they had and tells him he needs to see Jamal's source. Back at the mansion from before, we see Eric burying Jamal in the backyard and placing his own green trench coat over him, saying just because he's dead doesn't mean he gets to keep the black one. He then goes inside and starts flipping through Jamal's book, known as the Exodus Grimoire, where we'll be treated to some Easter eggs with what we see, including a werewolf like the one from Werewolf by Night, the mutant gene, and a display of the evolution of man, with the sixth step showing a man with claws and laser eyes levitating. The Frost Beast, the Ghost Rider, witches as it goes deeper into different forms of magic, and witches like dark magic and chaos magic alongside the prophecy of the Scarlet Witch, and vampires and the prophecy of the Dampier. As he's doing this, the source, Ophelia, arrives at the door and asks if she can come in. They have a conversation explaining who Deacon Frost is, his connection to his leader and the vampire king Dracula, the fact that Dracula is even a real person, what the order is, about Jamal, where Eric's next mission will be, and how if he can successfully take out Deacon, the order will consider bringing him in as an official agent. He agrees and is told that if anybody would know where to find Deacon, they would be at the Bloody Lounge, which is a fictional nightclub in London in this movie. Eric prepares to go to the club, and as he walks out with a black trench coat to the tune of Defunct by Daft Punk, Ophelia tells him if he wants to blend into the nightclub, he should look the part, so he has to go back, get the green trench coat he put over Jamal's body, and wear that. But he now does have the sword and glasses of Jamal, and he says next time to the black trench coat, alluding that later on in the film we will see him in that trench coat. He goes to the club, which is playing at this moment The Bomb by the Bucketheads, and throws up a UV grenade into the air and sees how the crowd reacts. He sees some people go down, and when they come back up, have burns on their faces. So he chases after one of them, because he is a vampire, based on that, through the nightclub and eventually catches him. He asks the vampire where Deacon Frost is, and he points to another door for private VIPs of the club. The vampire tells him the VIP area is for vampires only, or for worshippers. Eric asks if he means a vampire worshipper, and the vampire says they've made so many movies that more people than you think are obsessed with them. As he walks away, we overhear the vampire say, confused, "Who goes into a nightclub with a book?" He goes to the door after seeing another vampire go in by showing his teeth, and he does the same and is allowed in. When he gets in, Go by Moby is playing, and he releases 4 UV grenades and begins fighting off against all the vampires there in a packed club. They all get killed or run away, but the one with his own table gets shot in the leg by Eric, who asks the VIP where Deacon Frost is. And the vampire tells him the first base he went to, which Eric calls BS and says he already destroyed it. The VIP says if he's not there, he must be back at the brothel he used to go to. Eric asks him the name of 3 brothels, and the VIP says one of them, to which Eric tells him thank you for your service, and kills him. He calls back Ophelia and tells her he knows where Deacon is. Ophelia asks if he needs backup, and he says he's fine on his own, and that this means more than just redemption of who he once was. Now, it also means revenge for his mother and his mentor, but that he first has to go back to the mansion to reload and to get a change of clothes. Ophelia asks if he's changing into black, and Eric says it is a funeral, might as well dress for it. As he takes off the green trench coat, he can't find the grimoire and realizes he lost it at the club, and realizes the first vampire who told him about the VIP room pickpocketed him, which is why earlier that vampire said who brings a book into the club, because he already had the book at that moment. But he's focused on revenge right now and changes to go to war with Deacon Frost. To the tune of Detwork Southeast by Black Twang, he arrives at the brothel and starts taking out a ton of vampires and also some of the guys with the prostitutes along the way. He eventually arrives at the main office of the brothel and sees Deacon Frost about to kill somebody who didn't pay him his money. But Deacon looks up and Eric shoots him. He dodges the shot and they begin to fight. During their fight, they're at a standstill and Deacon says his men have been calling Eric the Blade, and his legend is spreading. Eventually, Deacon will be defeated as he has stakes through the 4 limbs and Eric tells him of everything he took from him. Deacon tries to speak in saying, "I can't say I remember killing your mother as she wasn't a memorable kill for me, but your mentor," as he says with a smirk, leading to Eric taking out another UV grenade and putting it in Deacon's mouth, telling him to shut up as it goes off and Deacon dies. Eric calls Ophelia and tells her the job is done. Ophelia congratulates him and tells him he's been accepted to become a new agent of the Order, but Eric tells her he has one last mission before he joins, and to pick him up back at the Bloody Lounge. He goes back to the club to retrieve the grimoire in broad daylight around 6 in the morning. We see the vampire that stole the grimoire is the new leader and is telling the 2 security guards from before what he wants to change at the club. But we see Eric come in and the vampire whispers to himself, "The Blade." The 2 security guards from before, which are massive and vampires, and they fight against Eric to the tune of "You Don't See the Signs" by Mark B, and ironically an artist by the name of Blade. As they're fighting, the other vampire tries to run away, but Eric launches his sword at him, which goes through his shoulder and into the wall. Eric struggles against the 2 security guards given how large they are, as they're basically super vampires, but he eventually defeats them. He walks up to the final vampire and takes the sword out of his shoulder. He asks for his book, and the vampire gives it to him. He then asks the vampire what the nickname he called him is, and the vampire says, "The Blade." Eric says he likes it better than the Dampier, and that it's time for him to live up to the name, as he kills the vampire with his sword, and the credits roll to the tune of "The Unknown" by Mark B and Blade. Now there will be 2 post-credit scenes. The first takes place directly after he has killed the vampire, as he is looking through the book and puts it against a window with light and with vampire dust over it, and reads the first page, which states to not trust the Order of Tyranna, and provides a table of contents of creatures to assemble in the fight against Dracula and Tyranna. A list that includes the likes of the Man-Thing, the Black Knight, a witch, and an avatar. Not the blue one, and not the Last Airbender, but the avatars we saw in Moon Knight, like Moon Knight himself. As he's reading this, he receives a call from Ophelia saying his transport is outside. He doesn't respond. Ophelia asks if he's there, and he takes off the earpiece, showing he's not joining the Order and will instead carry out Jamal's mission as he sets out to create the Midnight Suns. If you're interested in learning more about how the Midnight Suns could look in the MCU, I made a video on that a while ago, so I recommend you all check that out. The second post-credit scene shows a messenger come to a castle and tell a mysterious figure that Deacon Frost has been killed by a hunter. But before he died, he informed the others that if this was his final fight, his killer was the Dampier. The Dampier asked the figure, "What's the name of this Dampier?" The vampire messenger then proclaims, "It's Eric Brooks," but many have been calling him Blade, Lord Dracula. The camera pans and we see Dracula in all his glory say, "If the Dampier is real, he'll be coming for me, and it doesn't seem like he has those intentions from what you've told me. He seems to just be another hunter. Until he shows his true colors, treat this Blade like any other hunter, one who we plan to kill." And the movie ends. So with that, we have my proposal for the MCU's Blade. It meets the prerequisites of setting up Black Knight and the Midnight Suns. It'll be an effective transition into a new era of Blade by starting off Ali's franchise back in the 90s, same as Wesley Snipes. It will definitely be rated R, as a Blade film should be, and I'm hoping it can be the spiritual succession to the Guardians of the Galaxy in the MCU, with characters that have their own story away from the larger MCU and feel like an entirely different vibe, but also can still connect in, and it does have good music as well. So it needs that to be the spiritual successor of Guardians of the Galaxy. Speaking of music, I'll be dropping my playlist for the Blade movie on all available platforms. I mentioned pretty much all of the songs in this video, but I have a full playlist written down, so I'll be dropping that on my platforms. I have Apple Music, so it may be hard for some of you to listen to it, but I'll also drop a post showing the songs for those of you on Spotify who want to listen to it as well. With that though, please let me know down in the comments if this story for the MCU's Blade excites you, what changes you would make if any, and other characters you want to see me create stories for in the MCU. Thanks for watching this video. Please comment down below your thoughts, and see you all next time on Big Flick Energy.